RTA, Metra, and PACE all say they're approaching that fiscal cliff. They want Springfield to help. They're asking for lots of financial help. The Regional Transportation Authority says, again, it needs $1.5 billion. So when the board lays out details of that funding crisis at that meeting Darius was talking about in an hour, many lawmakers are going to be listening, especially because they could be the ones that decide if the RTA gets that funding. One of those lawmakers is State Rep LaShawn Ford. He is here with us this morning to talk about this supposed doomsday cliff that the Regional Transportation Authority is facing right now. So thanks for joining me this morning, Representative.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you.
I kind of want to start with, the fact that you represent a lot of folks in your district on the west side, western suburbs, that probably use CTA, use Metra. You say, though, you have serious concerns about this funding ask. What are they?
Well, I think that as a Democrat and a person that have to vote to fund the system, we just have to make sure taxpayer dollars are spent wisely and ridership increases and ridership feel safe about the use of public transportation. That's the ultimate push by the legislature in Springfield with ridership and riders top of mind.
All right, so are you going to demand, if this comes up for discussion in Springfield, are you going to demand answers, some accountability, some guarantees before, as you alluded, lawmakers potentially write a check to RTA?
Yeah, we have to realize that looking at the federal government, there's so much uncertainty about what's going to happen with federal dollars coming to public transportation. And so that's also on our mind that when the RTA says that they need $1.5 billion or $1 billion to continue services as they are, we have to remember that even at the federal government, they're talking about efficiencies and they're talking about making sure that taxpayer dollars are spent wisely. So yes, we're going to pursue better programming, efficiency, transparency,
safety,
and yes.
Let me, you mentioned that you're a Democrat, and even though the Democrats hold a majority in Springfield in both the House and Senate right now, do you think this is going to be a tough sell to lawmakers across the state? My big question too is, how did we even get here? Are there concerns about, let's say, fiscal mismanagement?
That's exactly right. There are concerns, and over the course of the discussions, we've laid out concerns about mismanagement in the systems. And so we will continue to pursue making sure that before a check is written, that we iron out the differences. The people in Springfield that represent the suburbs and Chicago recognize that PACE is very important, recognize that CTA is very important, and Metra. And so our goal is to protect riders and to make sure that we spend money wisely for better ridership. Are
you going to be at the RTA board meeting today?
I'll be listening. But I tell you, I speak with the leadership at RTA, and Kirk Dillard is a good friend of mine, and he was a former state senator. He's a great leader. He has an understanding of what needs to happen in order for Springfield to participate in more funding.
All right. Well, I know, the state is very cash strapped right now as well. So this could be a tough sell, regardless of the Democratic majority. I hope you get the answers and the clarity you're looking for. State Rep LaShawn Ford, thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
Regional Transportation Authority will present its so-called doomsday case. They're asking Springfield for financial help, $1.5 billion worth of help, before the head of the RTA goes before the board and lawmakers. Leanne Redden is joining us live. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Can you hear me, Director?
Yes, I can. Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Oh, we really, really appreciate it. So what can we expect from this morning's RTA board meeting? What information will be discussed?
We've got a big agenda this morning, and we'll be presenting 3 basic things to our board. In response to the challenges and the fiscal cliff that we're facing, the $771 million gap and the funding crisis that we are facing, we're going to be talking to our board about three things. One is what efficiencies that us and the three transit operators can put on the table to help, solve some of the challenges that we're facing. The second piece is laying out, if we're not successful in identifying additional revenue sources with our state partners in the legislature, what's going to happen to this system. We're going to have to face pretty significant service cuts and fare increases. And so we'll be laying out what that scenario, the scenario we don't want to have happen, what's at risk in the transit system if we're unable to fill that gap. And then the third thing that we're going to be talking about with the board today is if we're successful with our state partners and identifying not just monies to fill the gap, but additional monies for the transit system, what we can do to actually expand and enhance the transit system and really deliver transportation system, a public transportation network for our region that the taxpayers and the riders deserve.
So we're talking about that $770 million shortfall, and then the $1.5 billion ask is to then fill it and then expand. But I have to ask you this. The state is cash strapped right now, obviously facing a deficit. And I have to wonder, how did the RTA, the Metra, the CTA, PACE, the RTA as a whole get here in the first place? There's some lawmakers who wonder if there was, for instance, fiscal mismanagement.
Well, I think what we're facing chronic underfunding for decades, and our state is one of the lowest, our state contributes the least amount to our public transportation system compared to many of our peers around the country. You look at Philadelphia, Boston, New York City, their ranges of contribution from their state to their public transportation ranges anywhere from sort of the 30% range up to 50%. We're currently getting 17% of our operating revenues from the state of Illinois. We have, obviously, we all remember the pandemic, and we have been actually one of the most efficient systems in the country across multiple metrics, and that's been shown year over year. The chronic underfunding is the situation that we're really facing, and it's coming to a head now as the federal COVID relief monies run out, and we need to work with our state legislature to identify sources of revenue. One thing I will add that, we're not necessarily just asking for monies out of the state coffers. We are asking for the authority to fix some of our own problems here, both in terms of how we govern and sort of the regional reform for this transit system, as well as identifying opportunities where we could actually levy funds just in our six-county region and not necessarily take monies from the state coffers.
Yeah, I spoke to a lawmaker, Representative LaShawn Ford, earlier today, and that's one of the things he was saying is that there's going to be lawmakers who want some sort of guarantees in return, whether it comes with, establishing more efficiencies, service changes, cleanliness, safety issues being addressed, that sort of thing. But I have to ask, last question, and I know you have to go run a very big meeting. Do you think this will be a tough sell, even though the Democrats control the House and Senate downstate? Do you think it will be a tough sell? Because, frankly, there are a lot of downstate lawmakers on both sides of the aisle who may not have as much sympathy for the predicament up here.
Well, it's always a difficult conversation, excuse me, when you're asking for more money, and we recognize that we have to make a strong case for both showing the reforms and efficiencies that the transit system already has, as well as making the case for those additional funds, and that we can be trusted and good stewards and be accountable to report back and show what we can deliver with those dollars. But we're not alone. I mentioned our peers across the country who are facing similar situations, but even some of our downstate, our smaller transit operators in the Champaign-Urbanas, the Peoria areas, Bloomington, Normal, are facing similar situations just on a smaller scale.
Right. Okay. I know it should be an interesting meeting. Leanne Redden, RTA's Executive Director, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.